Hey, what's up, guys? So before we dive into the actual content here and start building out the campaign, I need to set the stage for you. So this video, or the rest of it anyway, was originally recorded as a live webinar. So I have edited the pieces of the webinar out that weren't super valuable for you. The housekeeping stuff, the introductions, some of the questions that were asked that were super specific. And what is left is really just the stuff that I think will be most valuable for you to understand the campaign, to build the campaign, and then to master the 4 tactics that we talk about and we use to level up this campaign. The reason I call all that out is because with pieces and chunks missing, it might feel a little disjointed, but really it was just to make this as digestible as possible for you. But if there's anything missing, or if you have any follow-up questions that aren't in there or aren't answered for you, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I will do my best to circle back and to make sure that you have the resources or the advice you need to use this strategy confidently. So with that said, we're going to jump into the recording part now, where we're going to lay out the concept of the campaign, and then we will actually build it, and you can either follow along or just watch and then build it later. And then we'll show you the 4 tactics for leveling it up, and I'll make some recommendations for where you can go if you want to focus on building your own campaign builder muscles independent of this workshop. So that's it, guys. I'll see you in a second. Here is what we are building today. It's really a pretty simple campaign structure. So it is going to start with a goal. In the middle, we are going to have a sequence, and at the end, we are going to have another goal. Now, here are the actions that we are tracking. Number 1, did they visit a page? So any page that you have access to on your website or on your landing pages, did they visit that page? And then did they do the thing that you wanted them to do next, which is normally going to be, for the example we're using, a purchase. So think of any of your sales pages anywhere on your website where somebody can process an order or sign up for something or make a transaction happen, the URL for that page, and then did they ultimately buy? Now, this campaign is called the Mona Lisa. And what happens, the Mona Lisa, is the curiously well-timed follow-up that happens in between. So visit the page, and then ultimately we want them to buy. But if they don't, we need to put something in between that follows up with them. That is where the Mona Lisa lives. Curiously well-timed follow-up is how I have it labeled here. Now, some of you might be wondering or might be thinking, hey, Greg, what if I use a third-party shopping cart rather than Infusionsoft to process orders? Or what if my orders happen offline? If you think you fall outside of this box and you're like tempted to tune out, like maybe this campaign won't be for me, here's what I want to say. Whoops, there was supposed to be some animation on that. The second goal doesn't have to be a purchase. It really could be anything. In fact, the first goal could probably be anything as well. So that's the point I want to make here, is if you are thinking about this from the perspective of a sales page that somebody visits and like a purchase that takes place online, that's fine. And that's what we're going to build. But I want to take those shackles off, because the truth is this same concept could apply to any 2 actions, okay? So with that in mind, I'm gonna jump into the software here, and we're gonna start building our campaign. Brett, anything you wanna add before I jump in here? Anything I've missed or overlooked, or any comments that we need to address?
No, I don't think so. I sort of fit into that as well. I don't necessarily just have something that someone can just go buy online either. And so I definitely appreciate what you're saying there.
Cool. So yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Just that we will show you some ways, or we will cover some ways. It's not about the order being processed online. It's about the purchase being represented in Infusionsoft. So if they get tagged, or if an internal form is filled out, or any other mechanism tells Infusionsoft that the purchase happened, that works for this as well.
Right. So the example that I was thinking of that would work really well, I think, for me, is they visit a scheduled consultation page, and then away they go, and they haven't scheduled a consultation yet, because that is, 2 goals, and there's something in between. So
yeah, perfect. And for anyone who is like thinking about other scenarios where this might fit, feel free to type those in the chat, and at the end we'll comb through them and show you how that could be adapted if you have anything that you're hung up on that. Yeah, Carrie said great example. I don't know if it's in the slide deck, but a scheduled consultation was one of the alternative use cases where this tactic will fit perfectly. So if you are following along, I want you to navigate to the campaign builder page in your Infusionsoft or Keap Pro app. I'm going to just call it out here. I use Infusionsoft. The vast majority of the content and resources I put out are for Infusionsoft users. But if you are a Keap user, the campaign builder is nearly identical between the two apps. So what we're about to cover once you get into the campaign should apply pretty seamlessly to Keap Pro as well. When you go to spin up your new campaign, you can call it whatever you like. I'm going to call it the Mona Lisa build along with 1 hyphen, and we'll just put this in my test category. But again, you can name it and categorize it however you see fit. Once you get to the campaign canvas, right? You have a selection of goals on the left-hand side. If you have built campaigns before, then a lot of this may be second nature. But the goal that we're going to use to trigger this campaign is the web page automation goal. All right, so let's bring that goal out, and we'll say visited product A sales page, right? So again, I'm using the purchase of a product. So this campaign is going to trigger when they visit a particular sales page on my website. And then after that, we're just going to tuck a sequence in for now. And I'll go ahead and connect those. And this will be the Mona Lisa. And then the final goal is going to be a purchase. So bought product A, bought product A. And like I said, if you are not, processing orders online or not using the shopping cart or the order forms, this second goal could be a tag that is applied when an appointment is scheduled, or when a purchase is recorded, or when WooCommerce sends the order data. Right. This second goal does not have to be a purchase goal. It just, for the sake of this exercise, because my purchases do happen in Infusionsoft, that's the way I'm structuring it. So I always recommend setting out your campaign structure at a high level first, so you can see the flow you want to have your contacts progress through. I also recommend, and you may have noticed this as I dragged these elements out onto the canvas, I also recommend naming them as soon as you put them on the canvas, giving them a unique name. The reason, and this may seem obvious, but the reason I say that is because if you drag something out and don't rename it, it's going to have this default language, web form submitted or tag applied, right? And once you have multiple goals with the default language, the Infusionsoft Campaign Builder reports can get a little bit confusing because they might all say untitled sequence or tag applied. And so by giving something a unique name, you've got the ability there to differentiate between two goals that might be really similar. Okay, so once we have the campaign structure built out, let's go ahead and begin configuring it.
Hey, Greg, just real quick, we have a question coming in from Gina. She's asking, will this be used with, could this be used with Zapier? And I think you had plans to start layering in some complexity. So maybe just kind of cast what we're going to be doing here so they can all understand what's happening.
Yeah, thanks. Gina, great question. Yeah, this could absolutely be used with Zapier. The real question is how would you like that to look? Because I mentioned that this conclusion goal could be a tag being applied. Well, if the purchase happens somewhere else and you use Zapier to tag them, then Zapier would be what is achieving that conclusion goal. So there's lots of ways that you could use Zapier in this process. But once we get this initial build or the structure built out, I am going to show you 4 ways that you could tweak it, modify it, improve it. And one of those is to use third-party external tools like Plus This or like Zapier to add some extra stuff to it. So that's where we're headed. So this web page automation goal, guys, it was rolled out quietly, 4 or 5 years ago. And a lot of people, for some reason, just have never discovered it. So here's the way that it works. When you open this goal, it gives you this little tracking script, right? And this is actually the exact same tracking script that that Infusionsoft uses for the Infusionsoft lead generation and analytics. So if you have installed any Infusionsoft tracking code on your website already, then you might not need to add this. But if this is the first time you've encountered the idea of Infusionsoft tracking code, then you're going to need to install this somewhere on your website in order for this to work. I normally recommend adding it to like your website theme so that it automatically shows up on any page. But if you're, dealing with a specific sales page or a landing page, you can absolutely add it just to that page without adding it to the rest of your website. But there's no harm in adding it to a bunch of pages. Now, for my website, right, I already have this code on there. So I don't need to do anything with step one. You really only need to do that once. And then what we need to do is add the URL of the website that we are tracking. So monkeypodmarketing.com/product A, right? For the use case here, I'm tracking people who visit the sales page for product A, but don't convert. And here's a trick. When you are using this goal method, you have to not only type the URL in, but then you have to press enter. I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone type that in and then click save and then be confused as to why it doesn't work. So you have to press enter. And the reason that's important is because you can add more than one URL. So if you have multiple versions of that sales page, right? Product A version 1 and product A version 2 that you're split testing between, you can add both of those URLs. And if they visit either of them, it will achieve this goal. So the key here, to zoom back out to a high level, is what we're doing is we're starting this campaign with a web page automation goal that is listening for visitors to a specific page on our website. So take any of your sales pages or Brett's book a consultation page. When somebody visits that page, they're going to achieve that goal and they're going to be added to this sequence. Now, if they do whatever the primary call to action is from that page, like product A, the goal is we want them to buy, right? So if they buy product A, then they're going to jump straight to that second goal and they're going to bypass this sequence in between. So the reason I emphasize that is because you might be thinking like, I don't want everyone who visits this page to get this automatic nurture or follow up or whatever Greg's got planned. Well, the good news is they won't know that they've been added to this unless they don't purchase, right? So if they take the second action, then they'll just jump from this goal straight to that goal and they'll never know that they were in that sequence. So what we're building is a contingency plan. It's more of a safety net to catch the people who take the first step but don't take the second. So I'm going to jump straight to that second goal. And
hey, Greg, before moving on, just back on the web page, there's a little confusion every time I talk about this.
Yeah.
People are like, it's going to grab contact details from anyone that visits that page. That's amazing. Yeah. It's going to email them. And I know Jamie's got a question here as well. He says, of course, this only applies to people for whom you already have a contact record, right? So maybe you can just touch on that.
Yeah, great. So the way that this code works, right, is it does collect data from anyone who visits that page, but it can't trigger this goal unless they already have a contact record in Infusionsoft. So that is correct. That means that they need to be someone in your database who has clicked a link or opened an email or submitted a web form or taken some behavior to let Infusionsoft know that that's them, right? For random anonymous web traffic that visits that page, this won't be able to follow up with them. But if you're doing a good job of building your list, right, and somebody who is in your database navigates to a sales page, this will fire and say, hey, I recognized you, and here's some additional information about that thing you were just looking at. So that is a great question. It is, I don't know if it's necessarily a drawback, but that's, we need their information in order to be able to follow up with them. Right? So in a perfect world, they would sign up for more info. But what this is doing is capitalizing on the people that we recognize, and we associate them with the contact record and then triggering the automation for them. Rob said, tech question, does Infusionsoft track using cookies or IP address? I believe it is cookie based. So if they have a cookie blocker or if they clear their cache cookies or they're on a brand new device, I don't think it would be able to associate that with them. So Nick said, a person has to come from Infusionsoft via a link to the sales page, and then Infusionsoft knows who they are. That would work, Nick, but that's not the only time this works. It also works if they click a link, any link, and then a few days later, they visit the sales page. So it doesn't have to be directly from an Infusionsoft email to that sales page. As long as Infusionsoft has tracked them and knows like that device, their phone or their laptop or whatever they're using to visit the sales page, if it knows who they are, it can achieve that goal. Brett, how'd I do on clarifying that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
I think it's good. And we have any other questions coming in. So yeah, keep
Great.
going.
Yeah, this is all important stuff, right? Because I think this goal is super powerful, but I think it gets a bad rap because people misinterpret some of the limitations around it, right? It's not going to follow up with every single individual, no matter who they are, who visits that page, but it will follow up with those people if they are already in your database. And if they're already in your database, then they've expressed interest in the past and are probably at a higher propensity to buy. Okay, right. So I'm going to jump to this second goal, bought product A, and I'll just configure this one quickly by selecting test product A. But I want to underscore that that second goal doesn't need to be a purchase. So in Brett's case, if this is his sales or consultation scheduling page, this would be the tag that represents booked consultation. Brett, do you use a scheduling tool, Calendly or Appointment Core or something?
Right, Appointment Core, which can automatically apply a tag or a goal. Right.
So you could set up the URL for the scheduling page, and then over here use the tag that indicates they've booked an appointment. And then here's the magic. The magic is what happens in between. So remember, anyone who's in your database that visits this URL is going to be added to this sequence. And then once they purchase or take whatever the second action is, they'll be removed from that sequence. So here's what I do. I actually don't recommend having any immediate steps in that sequence. So the first thing that I do inside that sequence, and in case you missed that, I went from the campaign level. I just double clicked on that sequence and jumped right in to begin configuring it. The first thing I do is I add a timer. Let's zoom out just a touch. And I usually wait like 30 or 35 or 45 minutes any day at any time, right? You could use, on a weekday between, office hours in their time zone, right? You could configure this however you like. But my philosophy is like, no matter when they're on the website, or whatever time of day it is, I just want the follow-up to happen shortly thereafter because I know they were just taking an action. They were just scouting out the CB Trilogy, right? If they're on the CB Trilogy page and it's 1 a.m, well, that means they're considering it. And so being able to follow up in that moment when the engagement is ripe, I feel like gives you a pretty decent chance of, or a higher chance of converting that person to becoming a customer or a booked appointment or whatever it is you want to have happen next. Now, I guess I'll back off that because I see the question. I saw Carrie's question. Brett already answered it. She said, this is like an abandoned cart sequence. It is, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be just that, right? This is like an abandoned outcome sequence. Like whatever the thing is that they were driving toward, it's an opportunity to follow up on that. So I put a delay timer in there, and then I add my next nudge. What I was going to say is I have a tendency to embrace and talk about automation because of the work that I do in the space that I'm in. So I'm okay with the email going out at whatever time of day because they know I'm using Infusionsoft and odds are that it'll actually help my case if I show them, if I model how automation could work. But if you're in an industry where it wouldn't make sense to send an email in the middle of the night, well, you could easily set this to be, during work hours. And if they visit at 1 a.m., the next day at 8:15, the follow-up would naturally come in. So feel free to adjust that to whatever makes the most sense for your business or your space, the space that you're in. So here's where I say, hey, did you do the thing yet? I just saw, I believe that's Mike Harris. I saw Mike's comment. They didn't do the thing sequence. Yeah. So, and then we have our follow-up in here. So all this is really doing is capitalizing on what we know about the person. And I'm not going to write that email there, but that's where you could follow up with them with addressing some of the most common concerns for people who don't buy or don't book, right? So in Brett's scenario, I'm just going to speculate wildly. I would imagine that some people may be concerned if they book a consultation with you that it's just going to be a thinly veiled sales pitch, right? And so Brett's follow-up might say, hey, I wanted to circle back and see if you were interested in booking that appointment. Some people think of these appointments as or are worried it'll just be a thinly veiled sales pitch. But the truth is, I want us to decide whether or not we're a fit for each other. And to do that, sometimes it's helpful to talk through your concerns. And I'll be honest if I'm not the best person to solve them or whatever, right? Brett's over there.
Hang on while I go write that down.
Taking notes. Yeah, right. So the language you use in that email and how you address it is going to be dependent on both what they did to get into this sequence and also what you want them to do next, right? But there's lots of opportunity there. The goal for this campaign is really just to take these two independent lily pads, right? We want people to do this, visit the page, and then we want them to buy. And we just need this sequence to have a higher percentage of people that get from one lily pad to the next. It's as simple as that. Think of this as a bridge or a paved path in between these two milestones we want them to experience. Now, some people, like I said, some people will visit this page and will automatically sign up. They'll say, yeah, this is exactly what I need. And they'll never know that they were in this sequence, right? But for some people who need that extra nudge or that extra hand-holding, then this is going to be a good fit for them. And I in the lead up and the promos for this webinar, I talked about this as being universally applicable because I think every business, needs people to do something, right? Like people make decisions, people take action based off of emotions, right? And their emotions come from, the messaging that we deliver. And in order to get them to do something, right, we have to use technology to get that messaging in front of them at the right time. And so I think that this is an opportunity to just take what you're already doing and plug some of the gaps, right? When we in the marketing world talk about leads slipping between the cracks, this is, let's see if I can trust myself to do this. This is the crack, right? Like this is where leads fall between if you don't have that set up. Now let's see if that works the way I expect it to. Perfect. Failed to revert changes. All right. See, this is the fun part about building campaigns and doing live demos. The Mona Lisa. Actually, look at that. Look at that, people. Using save and restore version. 2 more campaign builder features a lot of people may not have known were there. So I'm going to pause there and let's see. Next up, we're going to level it up. Yeah. So let's see. I want to pause and just see if there are any questions about what we have built so far, about any of the features that I've used, or about use cases for this. And if the answer is no, that's fine, because what's next is 4 different methods for making this better. But I want to make sure that at the very least, before we move on, this concept makes sense to you guys. Carrie said we need a Control Z. Yeah, that seems like an obvious one. Mike said with every goal or everything, we want them to always be thinking, what if they don't, and build accordingly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So, when you have goals, they're high-level milestones in your customer's journey. And the sequences that go between those goals are really just designed to get them to that next milestone. Right. So if there's 2 things I know about any sequence, right? Whenever you have a sequence, you know that they did the thing leading into it. And you also know that they haven't done the other thing. And I think that's an important layer to campaign building, is that the longer they are in this sequence, right, we just still know they haven't done that second thing. So I think a lot of people think of campaign automation as if this, then that, if this, then that, which is fine. But the way that the next layer on top of that is that if this, then that, until this, right, is recognizing that not only have they done the trigger, they also haven't done the next thing, which I think that was Mike who said that, which might Yeah, which brings us very seamlessly to the first level of making this campaign that much better, which is delayed follow-up. So if version 1 of this campaign is just an immediate follow-up 20 or 30 minutes later or the next morning or whatever, then version 2 is going to be a delayed follow-up a couple of days later or the next day, right? And so I recommend building this sequence out to have however many touch points you think it might need and then some, right? So follow-up, I almost typed, yeah, here you go, Jamie, having trouble getting in there. I almost typed FU2, which I think could be misinterpreted. So I'm going to go with follow-up 2. But yeah, you can build 2 or 3 or 5 touch points in there. Think about if they visit that page but have not done this, what might they be wondering in that section of their journey? And it could be, assuaging their concerns, right? Addressing their doubts or the common objections that people have. Or it could be, showing them case studies of people who have used that thing or bought that and experienced results. It could be, you could do a promotion in there. You could say, like, people who visit it and they get a follow-up, but if they don't buy, you sweeten the deal a little bit, or you offer them a promo code or some sort of incentive to get them across the line. What you do in there is totally up to you. But remember that if one individual nudge increases it by a small percentage, it's already worth it. And if you have 2 or 3 or 5 touch points that can collect or get more people over the finish line or to the next lily pad, it only gets better from there. I think that with things like this, there's no reason not to have this in place. Sure, this won't fire for every person who visits that page, but for people who are in your database, it will. And for those people, they're going to convert at a higher rate, which ultimately will have an impact. So setting this up once allows you to have the benefit of consistent follow-up for those moments where that they were at a key crossroads. Carrie said, go ahead.
Yeah, so it looks like you're about to get some of these questions. A couple of tips as well when it comes to these sequences, just to think about, is with this nudge, these kind of nudge emails, these like objection style emails that you're talking about, I like to mix them up, the style of them up a little bit as well. So for example, if you are normally sending out branded type emails, and all of a sudden they get a less branded email, almost like a really personalized email from somebody that's like, hey, I just noticed you were checking out XYZ, and I would love to answer any questions that you have about it. Something like that could elicit a response right back. In fact, a lot of my clients have told me, yeah, that works great. They're replying right back to my email. So that's a kind of a healthy tip that I think works well. The other thing to consider is that it doesn't always have to be email, right? Like in a lot of these instances, it could be a notification back to the sales rep, the owner of that contact record, to say, hey, did you know, sorry if you're getting to this in a later one, but
so yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Basically just saying, hey, your contact is checking out this page. It might be worth reaching out to them, give them a phone call, send a text, whatever. So just a couple of, I think, healthy tips there with that situation.
Yeah. If it's a situation where automation makes sense, then it certainly can be automated. But if it's like, a $5,000 high purchase price item that requires a little bit more personal touch, then maybe your automation is designed for your internal team, is designed to nudge the owner of that contact so that they can personally call them, right? I can see a lot of ways where customer facing automation would be seamless and effortless, but that's not every scenario. That wouldn't necessarily be appropriate in every scenario. I don't think I mentioned this. I've got a slide coming up where I talk about some plus this ways to improve it. And another option here would be to automatically and dynamically add people to a custom audience on Facebook that you're running ongoing retargeting ads to for that particular product. And then when they purchase it, right, automatically and dynamically remove them from that audience. And plus this is one tool that does that. I think Zapier can also do that, or SyncSumo, or My Fusion Helper. There's a bunch of different integrations for Facebook audiences, but like Brett said, it doesn't have to just be email here. What you're designing is the experience that helps best bridge that gap. And email could be part of that, but it might not be. Okay, so number 2 here is segmentation, right? So this makes a lot of sense if every person who visits your website is a potential prospect, right? But what happens for me is I actually have this set up for all of my courses. So if you've been on my website and you've been looking at courses, you may have received some of these. But what I found was that I was also getting people who had previously purchased this, or people who are MonkeyPod referral partners, visiting those pages, looking for additional info, trying to log into the course, etc. So for those people, what I recommend doing is actually building a decision diamond here and segmenting off previous purchasers and partners, right? So, and this is pretty straightforward, but the idea here is like, are there other reasons why somebody might be on that page? And so for me, I don't know what those reasons are for you, but for me, it's like, if they're an existing customer and they're on that page, well, it probably makes sense. They probably want their login info. That's what they're looking for, most likely. Or if they're a MonkeyPod affiliate, they're probably looking for details so that they can recommend it to someone else. So building in a segmentation decision diamond up front allows you to treat prospects, one way, and internal parties or people who need to be excluded from that a different way. So that's the second layer here, is to add some segmentation to your campaign, so that based on what you because these people are already in your database, so you can use the information about them to branch them into separate follow-ups accordingly. Brett, anything you want to add on the segmentation concept? Does that make sense? Did I do an okay job of explaining that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Just make sure to use that test feature, because it'll get you sometimes, that decision time, some of the negatives.
That's the whole reason I'm not building this right now, is because decision diamonds are my Achilles heel. Yeah. For as well as I like to think I know Infusionsoft, I still get decision diamonds wrong far too regularly. So this test function is your best friend. I set up my rules and then I test every possible permutation of it there. Plus this, right? I use plus this. I think Brett uses it as well. So here's the deal. Plus this is one of a number of tools that extend the power of Infusionsoft, right? So I'm going to lay out a couple of plus this features that I think would make this campaign that much better. But obviously, this isn't an all-encompassing list, and there are other tools that you could use to accomplish some of these same features. But being that I use plus this a lot, it's the one I'm most familiar with. So tool number 1, plus this does work with Keap, Scott. Tool number 1 here is smart links. So smart links are links that you can use inside Infusionsoft emails that lead them to different destinations based on what you know about them, right? So in any of these follow-up emails, you could, let's say you wanted to do a time-sensitive offer, right? So you could apply a tag and say, if you purchase this in the next 4 days, you're going to get X, Y, or Z. And then after 4 days, you remove that tag. Well, if you use smart links, if they click that link when they have the tag, it'll take them to one page. If they click that link when they don't have the tag, it'll take them to a completely different page, and you can handle the segmentation from there. Countdown timers. Similarly, if you want to do a time-sensitive offer in that sequence or in that window, or you want to build urgency, plus this gives you countdown timers that you can easily insert into emails. They look a little something like this.
While you're pulling that up, Greg, Jamie's asked a question about if they go to schedule an appointment, then they don't schedule an appointment, and the salesperson calls them, and then they end up scheduling an appointment on the phone, what he should do. Yeah. And it looks like Rob and Julian actually came in with great advice. One's an internal form. Another one could be that the sales reps just go and book it themselves. So there's a couple of options there. But I think any of those would work.
Yeah. I mean, the key is, right, like that could happen anyway. But how is that information getting back to Infusionsoft or back to Keap? Is like, if something happens offline, I have a quote I like, that it doesn't need to happen online, but online needs to know that it happened, right? So when you have an interaction over the phone or in person with someone, like, I get it. That's totally fine. but you can't expect automation to intuitively know that unless we have a mechanism for getting that info in. I see some internal forms as a suggestion, or just manually tagging them. That would totally work as well, especially if you use a tag for automated scheduling, you could manually apply that same tag to stop the follow-up or the automation there. So great job, and thank you to those of you who chimed in to help out there. Yeah, scarcity triggers. This is a this feature that allows you to offer something for the next 10 people, and then on the 11th purchase, they don't get that bonus, right? So in this scenario, you could make some sort of offer for, let's say, after a live event, you have an order page, right? In the follow-up, you could say the next 10 people who visited that page but have not yet converted are going to get this bonus, and then you could use scarcity triggers to only allow the bonus for the first 10, and for the 11th or anyone after, they wouldn't get it, right? So some use cases there for driving scarcity, or for psychological triggers for encouraging purchases. Page triggers. This is an interesting one. So like the web page automation goal, page triggers allows you to trigger a tag when somebody spends a certain amount of time on a page. So this one here should fire whenever somebody visits that page. But let's say you have a longer video, right? But you only want the follow-up to trigger if they are on that page for 3 or more minutes, because the video is 4 minutes long, right? So what you can do is use page triggers to delay that initial trigger for only people who spend a certain amount of time. The tricky part for page triggers is that it does need to know who the person is when they arrive on that page. So I think they have to come from an Infusionsoft delivered email or be inside a membership area. So I use this in my membership area to know when people start certain courses. If they spend a certain amount of time on a course page, it tells me that they have begun that course. So page triggers is just a slight tweak on the native feature with a little bit more flexibility. And then the final one here is calculate time between. So if that's a feature in Plus This that allows you to capture 2 events, and then it measures the amount of time in between them and stores that back to a field. So if you want to see how long it takes for people who visit the scheduling page to book an appointment, you can use that feature to measure the amount of time that transpires between those 2 milestones. And then you can report on that metric and say, all right, it usually takes 3.5 days. And obviously, we would like to take less than 3.5 days. So you just work on, once you know that number, you can focus on, what does it take to make that timeline shorter to get people converted in a more expedient fashion. Any other Plus This features come to mind for you, Brett?
No, those are awesome. That's pretty exhaustive. And honestly, some of those, what I approach campaign building at the 80-20. Some of those would be more like, I've got this thing as dialed in as possible. There's nothing else I can do, right. And now I'm going to calculate time between events, that sort of thing. So yeah, this is great.
Yeah. So I believe in what I describe as iterative campaign building processes, right? Like you design it, you launch that first version of it, you analyze what is working, what isn't working, and then you optimize, and then you repeat, right? So you go from design to launch to analyze to optimize, and then you start that cycle over again. Mm-hmm. And so many of these things are not V1 tactics. This is, the 3rd or 4th iteration of layering things into your campaign. But if you have campaigns that are successful or are functioning, that's a win in and to itself. What I'm describing are the fine-tuning aspects where you might be able to dial up the conversions a percent or 2. And for campaigns that have been live and running for a while, that might be a big deal. Sometimes you can make a small change that creates, big results.
Yeah.
Darren asked about the mechanics of the decision diamond. So that is, great setup for me here. That is covered pretty extensively in the CB Trilogy course. But at a high level, the campaign builder has if-then logic, and the decision diamond allows you to treat different people differently based on what you know about them. So if 100 people achieve this goal, This decision diamond, I think of it as like the usher at a movie theater who checks your ticket and says, all right, you over there in theater 1, you over there in theater 2. And he's just kind of hanging out here, routing people into the appropriate sequence based off of the rules you lay out in here. So if you don't design any rules, right now there are no rules in here, contacts who achieve this would go into both sequences. But as you set up your logic there, the decision diamond filters people into the paths based on the rules that you define. So Darren, hopefully that makes sense for you. Brett, anything you want to add on decision diamonds other than test?
Yeah, no, it's good. Are you going back into that previous purchasers and partners? Did I get that feeling?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So the final iteration here, and I know we're coming up on the hour, but this is the last one, and then we will do the conclusion contest, and I will circle back to the bonus that I teased earlier, is liquid content, guys. So if you are not familiar, a couple months ago, I published a blog post on the concept of liquid content, and just recently, Infusionsoft released it for everyone. You may not have seen it yet, but it should be here on the marketing section. I actually don't know if it's rolled out for Keap users yet, but in Infusionsoft, it is under the marketing section, just here as dynamic content. So what this does is it allows you to send one email to different people and display different messages based on what you know about them. Okay, so this is dynamic content within your email. So I have previous purchasers and partners in the same sequence, right? So in here, in this email, it's going to go to people who have bought and people who are MonkeyPod partners, right? But the message for people who have bought is going to be, hey, here's your login info for the course that you've bought. And the message for people who are partners is going to be, here's your affiliate link in case you want to promote the CB Trilogy course, right? So those are two different messages. So I'll just put the subject line as the CB Trilogy. And then in the body of the email, we need to add the two different messages, right? And I'll just say, love, Greg. So in between the hello and the conclusion is where the liquid content or the dynamic content code is going to go. So I think long-term, they will give us a way to generate the code from within the email builder. But for now, you go to marketing, and then you go to dynamic content, and then this is the builder that allows you to generate those short codes. So this isn't the part where I expect you to follow along in real time, although you're welcome to. What I will do is point you guys to a resource, a tutorial that I've created that shows you exactly how to use this because it is a little bit clunky. So dynamic content generator, first it says, well, what information are we using to decide what we display? Okay. And I'm using information based off of the contact. So the other options are off of the user. I don't know what profile is, or off of the date or time. So I'm going to do off of the contact. And then you can choose from all of or most of the contact fields or custom fields. But at the very bottom, I see tag names and tag IDs. Between the two of those, I always choose tag IDs because, well, the ID is unique. It's a number, whereas the tag name, I don't know if it's case sensitive. Sometimes you have multiple tags with the same name in different categories. So I always recommend using tag IDs. And then you have, with liquid content, you have modifiers or conditionals. Modifiers modify the information. So if you wanted to make their first name all capitals, that would be a modifier. But for conditionals, it allows you to say like if and else statements. So if it contains, and then it gives us a field. So if the contacts tag IDs contain, so I'll say bought product A, that's tag 465. Here we go. Then we're going to say else. So you could build this out else if, which would be if you wanted to have multiple steps. But I know that the only people who will be in this sequence are people who have bought or are partners. So if they are partners or if they have bought, that's tag number one. Otherwise, they're partners. That's sort of the statement that I built. And when you click add to content editor, it slaps it in over here. So these are the placeholders. So I'm going to adjust it for here's your login info for the campaign builder course. And then down here, we would say, here's your affiliate link for the campaign builder course. So the top section is going to display for people who have bought that course, right? The bottom section is going to display for anyone else, which would be the group of partners there. So let's copy that from here. And then we hop back in and just paste it into the email just like that. And you can test, you can preview, but it does use your user profile. So I found that the easiest way to test it is oftentimes to put a contact in the sequence with those tags or the right tags to make sure that the right message is displaying. But yeah, the builder here, I think, is a little bit clunky. It does give you an option to preview using existing contacts, and it'll show you which of those statements it would display for them. But guys, that's the idea here is we build one email that has, and you can modify it once it's in here, right? So you could add links to these different sections. You can break these up if you want to, put the brackets around an image or around a button so that it does or doesn't display for people. Lydiana just said, sometimes you rename tags, which is another reason to use tag IDs. Great point. Yeah, the tag ID will not change. The tag name can change. Mark actually said that as well, but I'm going to give credit to Lydiana on that one. And then we move this email to ready, move the sequence to ready, and our campaign is locked and loaded, guys. So this is, I don't think for this section, I don't think I would add any additional follow-up. You might, design something to pull them out of that sequence, but my philosophy is like, cool, if they visit and they are a prospect, we want to follow up with them multiple times. But if they visit and they are an existing customer or a partner, we just need to, it's more transactional. We just get them whatever we think they were going for and then let them be. But that's the nature of this campaign. Is it's designed to help get people from that first milestone to the second milestone. And then obviously the additional follow-up, the segmentation, the plus this or third-party features, and the liquid content are all optional ways to make it that much better. Brett, how'd we do?
I love it, man. I love how you've just layered that in. I mean, you can literally, if you're just starting off with Infusionsoft or Keap, just start, with that first version if that's all you're comfortable with, and then put automation to work in your business. But if you're more like Greg, you're a master, like go all the way out, use the liquid content. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is super helpful. And like I knew I'd learned something here. But we're up on the hour, so I'm good just to jump into Q&A unless you've got anything else.
I do have a couple of things, but I want to make sure that we invite people to stick around and post their questions if they have any, and we will certainly do our best to answer them. But I want to make sure that we wrap up that contest. And I also want to offer a casual reminder about the CB Trilogy course. Nobody has asked. I've been teasing this. Nobody has asked why it's called the Mona Lisa. Are there any guesses? Anyone wondering why this is called the Mona Lisa, or anyone already know why it's called the Mona Lisa? Greg, I do all my own stunts. True that. Who's watching you? She's always watching you. Because it makes me smile. It's fair. Because it looks smaller in person. That's also true. Because of the smirk in the painting. Okay.
Oh, good. These are funny answers.
Yeah, that's great. I see. Mona Lisa's always looking at you. Ooh, that's good. Yeah, it's actually not any of those. Have you guys seen? This is super niche, and I'm already apologizing for it. Have you seen Parks and Recreation? It's the show, right, with Leslie Knope and Ron Swanson and whatnot. There is a character in that show. Her name is Mona Lisa Saperstein, and she's obnoxious, but one of her go-to catchphrases is she sticks out her hand and she's like, money please. And so when I think about this campaign and what you're effectively doing in this section is, I'm not saying that you should make money please the subject of your email, but that's the nature of what we're doing there. We're just asking for that conversion. We're asking for that sale. So I describe it as the Mona Lisa because that is what I picture when I build that additional step there. Okay. Yeah, thanks. If you haven't seen Parks and Rec, it's a light and funny show that is easy to pick up and watch when you need something to unplug.
When you need something to treat yourself.
Yeah, to treat yourself. Yeah, that's exactly it. Maybe that'll be another campaign, the Treat Yourself campaign.